Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Be a Great Player. Now, in today's episode, we're talking about... I've forgotten what we're talking about today, but I'm sure it was fascinating. If you'll excuse me, I need to make a trip to the little boys' room. Bladder's not what it used to be, if you know what I mean.
Hello. Welcome to How to Be a Great Player. Today we're answering a question that was posted on www.greatgamemaster.com. And that question was, how do I reconcile age with my character? And specifically the question went along the lines of, we almost invariably always make characters at a similar kind of age, somewhere between the 25 and the 32 mark. Whether this is the age we all wish we were, we wish to be, we can't wait to get to, we wish we could go back to, who knows. But that's kind of the ballpark figure age group. But when someone creates a character who's in their mid-50s or 60s, how do you reconcile that character, being 60, is only level 1, rank 1, only has a certain percentile and very low percentiles in certain skills? How do you accommodate for that? Well, there are plenty of ways of going about it, all narrative of course. The person was living a cloistered life, doing the same tasks day in and day out. But even that does ring a little bit untrue because, well, even if you are a scribe in a monastery writing out books, you will pick up what those books are talking about, and that's experience. If you're working out in the fields, well, you're going to learn new things every day. Even if you are cleaning the bilges on some backwater starship, you will still learn and develop and grow. So what could account for being an older character and still starting at a low level? Well, it's entirely up to you, of course, it's your character. But what really gets to being an interesting question in my mind is, what does age have as an implication for your character? So if we look at the very first thing about age is, before we get there, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here and they're all over the place. Before we get to what are the implications of having an older character, we need to look at what are the implications of having an older character from the rule system perspective. Now, a lot of rule systems, the older your character, the more wisdom or knowledge skills you have, the less strength and the less dexterity skills you have. Well, that makes absolute sense. Maybe. If you are a warrior who's been training since the age of 11 and you're 50, you're still going to be very well built and very agile. If you are a fat, chubby child, you're not going to have great dexterity whether you're 10, 20, 100 or not. It really, really depends on the character. But if we look at the stats, you need to take the stats into account, and that could create some kind of justification as to why your character is older. They might be older and they've got a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more intelligence, but they're not as strong or as dexterous as they once were. So that can be a reason why your older character is still level 1, but is maybe a little bit different. Another thing that you can look at as to why the character is starting at level 1 and has very little experience, even though they have lived an entire lifetime, is quite simply that it is a game mechanic. And from a game mechanic perspective, it's a case of that character didn't start to level until they decided to become an adventurer. So that very first day when they put down that grease cloth and said, I am not scrubbing any more thermal deflector arrays, I am not planting another pumpkin in this field, I am going on an adventure. That is when the experience actually started to kick in. It's a little bit of a mechanic solution, I do know that, but that's the best that we can do because we are constrained by a mechanic-based system. Now that that's done with, let's look at the implications of age. If you have a character who's really advanced in age, your backstory needs to reflect that. And your backstory can't just be from the age of 20 to the age of 50, he married his wife, had 2 children, and raised sheep on a farm. That's not enough. It's really, really not enough. Your character should be filling that gap that oftentimes the older generation do. I know I certainly do it, and I wouldn't consider myself in the older generation group just yet. We talk about our experiences. Well, I remember when it was like this. I remember when the Federation was at war with the Klingons. I remember when Battlestar Galactica was still a museum piece. I remember when the Orcs were no longer at war with us. It was a lovely period in our history. You've got to build in that stuff, and that means you've got to work with the GM to work out some historical events. And this gives you a really powerful interaction option where you can sit down with your fellow players' characters and reminisce about the good old days, and they're actually true. That's really, really cool, and it's a great space to be in. It gives you some great role-playing opportunities. So your backstory needs to be equally powerful. It needs to be equally strong. Now, how does this influence your role-playing? Should it influence your role-playing? Are you going to be more cautious, more sanguine in your approach to how, well, this is the situation, this is the scenario, we need to do this? Are you going to be more impulsive because you've now broken free? The alternative, remember, from going off adventuring at an older age is not that you are wiser and want more knowledge, it's that you're having a midlife crisis. And you want to get away from the mundane humdrum existence, and you want to go and experience adventure. So you recklessly throw yourself into situations because you want to feel as if you're 18 again. Meanwhile, you're pushing 50. So how does that influence your role play? Is your character happy with their age? Do they want to be younger? Do they want to be older, for example? Because that comes to the next point. What if you turn the age thing on its head? What if you're playing a character who's 14 or 13? It's entirely possible, and there's nowhere in the book that says that you can't. And a lot of rule systems actually don't have any kind of stats modifiers against that. They don't drop your intelligence, they don't drop your wisdom, they don't increase your dexterity and that kind of thing. Because I think, generally speaking, it would just be a reduction in most skills. Perhaps maybe charisma goes up because there's that cuteness factor of being a youngster. Except that you're a teenager, so all the cuteness factor dribbles out your ears. Anyway, the point of the matter is if you're playing a younger character and you're bright and perky and curious about everything, or sullen and sultry and miserable about everything, because your hormones are running rampant inside your body, it doesn't really matter. You've got to look at it and say, well, this age, this is what we expect. This is kind of what we expect from a 12-year-old, or this is what we expect from a 50-year-old, or this is what we expect from a 40-year-old. And then work that into your character. Because, like all of the other attributes, the passive, non-looked at attributes like hair color and eye color and gender and all those kind of things, all of those things that we tend to just fill in as we're creating the character sheet, this one has major potential for you to be a better role player by playing up to your age group, the age group of your character anyway. And by bringing that into the game so that people don't for a moment suspect that your youngster is old or that your oldster is young, for lack of the appropriate English words. Now, another thing about the youngsters is if they've got a very high intelligence, you're a Wesley Crusher. He's had memes devoted to him for 20 years about the obnoxious Wesley, who had the intelligence of a genius but was only 14 or 15 years old and could solve problems that adults couldn't. You might want to play the insufferable little genius if you really want to, but on the other hand, you have an opportunity here to play the soul of the party, the adventurer, the eternal explorer, marveling at the curiosities of life and getting into trouble as a result. So, again, just another knock-on effect of playing a different age. I hope this has given you some food for thought on how to be, or how to role play an older or a younger age category, and I know that it didn't really satisfactorily answer how do we get around the idea of playing an older character that starts off as level 1, but unfortunately it is a result of the mechanics, and you can chalk it down to lack of experience, or perhaps that experience only starts once you leave the field. And don't ask any questions about level 5, 10, 20 and so forth NPCs, we won't go there. Alright? Until next time, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Happy running around as an older person or a younger person if that so takes your fancy. And until the next time, I wish you happy playing.